Happy Easter, everybody. It's a day of relaxation, religious celebration, and in the gaming world, vengeance and murder. I felt it only proper that we spend Easter Sunday reviewing the absolute best representation of the Easter Bunny the Switch has. A crazed serial killer with a sickle from indie horror masterminds Puppet Combo. And this is a game Switch users should be familiar with. After all, who could forget when players were horrified by the game icon to the point they begged Puppet Combo to change it, only to be shot down by a hilariously blunt no on Twitter? Anyways, let's dive right in. Here is my review of Murder House for the Nintendo Switch. The story here is centered around the Easter Ripper, a serial killer that would abduct children while dressed as the Easter Bunny to torture and kill them in a deadly Easter egg hunt. Fortunately, he was eventually caught and executed. You play as Emma, a member of a TV crew trying to make their career by filming a supposed paranormal documentary at the Ripper's old home, only to become trapped there and hunted down by the Ripper himself back from the grave. Emma must then evade the Ripper in his own home, finding Easter eggs to unlock the way out. Now, as a story, I find it entertaining. This game is trying to be a bad B-movie with having all of the characters be crude movie stereotypes, and it works to sometimes comedic results. And the inclusion of the prologue showcasing the tale of a boy that becomes abducted is a neat little touch. Kind of like how Puppet Combo would link up and use their Night Shift game as a playable prelude to stay out of the house. When it comes to gameplay, Murder House is a third and first person survival horror game in PS1 style. As you play, you'll navigate a house using tank controls, finding items to solve puzzles and unlock doors, all while being stalked by a killer Easter Bunny. Now, when it comes to the Switch version, this contains the same content as other releases. You can play the prologue and main game separately. We have all the neat little CRT and PS1 filters to make the game look more like an old horror experience, and it includes the patched-in extended ending to the story that gives it a little plot twist. As far as the game itself, imagine a PS1 Resident Evil game with a stalker villain. When you play this game, you navigate the Easter Ripper's house, which is full of locked doors. Your goal is to find items and use them to unlock areas of the house and figure out a way to escape. Keys open doors, notes contain puzzle hints, the list goes on. It's all very classic PS1 survival horror, all the way down to finding items to be able to save your progress in a special save room. You even have classic tank controls built in, having you spin around a turn, and having that stationary aim your weapon without strafing from the old days. The big twist here is that it's a stalker game. After you freely explore the house and open some areas up, members of the TV crew are killed by the Ripper and Emma has to run to escape. He'll show up randomly as you explore the house, so you have to always be on the lookout for hiding spots as ammo is very scarce and should be saved for the final confrontation. You also have to watch your stamina, as running for too long will make you have to walk to catch your breath. And this is where Puppet Combo's signature brand of horror comes in. When the Ripper's in the room, you know, because you get an incredibly loud audio cue with the music. It's not quite as crazy as the audio cues in games like Nun Massacre, but it'll definitely give you a light heart attack when it happens. And once you realize the Ripper can appear randomly in any room at any time, it creates that tension of where he is and if you're free to explore the room or need to run for your life, which leads you to expect him to always be there even if he isn't. The old Resident Evil style door opening transitions add to this as well, with the tension of what the room will have in it. This is nice as the game remains scary because of that and the audio. Even before the Ripper shows up, there's great ambient horror noise going on in the background, both quiet and loud, that just makes you be on edge, even if you know there's no danger until the story shows it to you. As far as being a Puppet Combo game and a scary game, it's pretty good. You get a nice amount of time to familiarize yourself with the house's layout before the killer arrives, and the game is really generous about not having you constantly run into the Ripper as you play. He'll show up from time to time, but it isn't every room or two. And if you're like me and drink a liquid luck potion before you play, you might not run into him at all. My first run through this game had the Ripper never show up outside of scripted and story encounters. I made it all the way to the final encounter at the end of the game without a single random encounter. I actually went back to my previous save files and went into settings to see if the game had broken on me with him appearing, only to realize that no, I'd just gotten really lucky. But it's not all perfect. This is mimicking an old gameplay style, and the gameplay is rather clunky as a result. The tank controls act as they're supposed to, giving you clunky turning, which is emphasized more so in the camera toggle, where you can play in third person with camera angles like the old Resident Evil titles, or first person like newer horror games. The first person mode looks great, but it retains that clunky tank way of turning and makes me just want to stick to third person view. Now, let's dive into content and length. Your first run through this game will probably take you at least a couple of hours, maybe a bit more. It's plenty of time for the relatively low price tag on this game, as is the case with everything Puppet Combo makes. Next up is presentation. This game is trying to mimic PS1 graphics, and it does a nice job with the blocky textures and animations whenever blood splatters everywhere. Even in first person mode, it looks pretty good, though the textures are known to warp a bit when navigating around in first person. With performance, it's great, well, depending on your settings. Murder House actually has a 30 FPS and a 60 FPS mode you can toggle, though the game will straight up tell you the 60 FPS mode is unstable, and it really is. There's wonderful smoothness in some areas with this mode, but many outside areas will be very jittery and laggy, whereas the same areas will be fine if you just stick to 30 FPS. The only real issue with performance are the initial load times. It can take quite a bit of time, up to about 30 or 40 seconds, to load a save file if you die or when you first boot up the game. And that brings us to battery life, which is great. Murder House gives the original and light switch models a battery range of 4 to 6 hours, while the V2 and OLED models get 7 to 9 hours. In conclusion, the Easter Ripper is one of many serial killers that made their way to handhelds through the Switch and in good form. Now, the downside, the gameplay is a bit clunky and the 60 FPS mode is unstable. But if you're okay with the 30 FPS mode and a bit of dated clunk, this is a great little horror game about being chased by a crazed serial killer dressed as the Easter Bunny. Reviews to Go rates Murder House for the Nintendo Switch an 8.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great Easter, hopefully without getting your head chopped off by the Ripper.